ASMR Chess. D4 by Harry Nelson Pillsbury with white, and D5 by world chess champion Emmanuel Lasker. C4 and E6, the Queen's Gambit declined. We are in St. Petersburg in 1895, and we are witnessing this game between the world champion Emmanuel Lasker with the black pieces and the rising superstar, the comet on the chess sky, Harry Nelson Pillsbury. And we will see an ungodly amount of brilliant sacrifices in this game, enough to mesmerize even the most hardened chess fan. Siegbert Tarrasch, a contemporary of these players, famously said, "Vor das Endspiel haben die Götter das Mittelspiel gelegt." That is German and means before the endgame, the gods have placed the middle game. And that is particularly true for this game. I want to thank our sponsor, Babbel, for teaching me to read Tarrasch in his own language. Babbel is one of the top language learning apps in the world. Here is how it works.
Ich habe ein wichtiges Anliegen.
Ich habe ein wichtiges Anliegen. Ich habe ein wichtiges Anliegen. The lessons prepare you to have conversations about travel, business, relationships, and, of course, chess. And if you want to start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks, you can get Babbel with up to 60% off if you use my link in the description. Thank you very much. Harry Nelson Pillsbury played knight to c3, and the world champion replied knight to f6. Prior to this tournament, the very famous Hastings tournament had been played, the strongest chess tournament in history at that point, and to this day one of the strongest chess tournament ever held. And this rising star, Harry Nelson Pillsbury from the USA, had won that tournament in a dominating, very impressive fashion. He played knight to f3, and the world champion played pawn to c5. So this is sort of a Tarrasch or pseudo-Tarrasch system, opening system that we have here. This game is one of the great classics of chess history, and we will go over it. I will explain all the moves. In particular, we will explore the more fascinating sacrificial concepts displayed in this game, and along the way we will learn a little bit about the two magnificent players who gave us this chess gem. Bishop g5 by Harry Nelson Pillsbury, the young American. The bishop pins the knight to the queen, so if the knight were to move, the queen will be lost. Very typical concept in chess. Lasker plays to destabilize the center here before addressing this dynamic, so he uses his c-pawn and the fact that while he has played a pawn to defend his d-pawn, white has not done so, and therefore he plays c takes d4. Since this pawn here cannot be captured by this, queen takes d4 is the move that we see, and the point is destabilizing the center, getting the queen out maybe a little bit too early. Sometimes it's not the best idea maybe to get the queen out too early. It can be double-edged. And we see the second point of the move. Lasker plays knight c6. Hello, Majesty. With an attack on the queen. But, of course, Harry Nelson Pillsbury, being one of the absolute strongest chess players in the world at this point, had foreseen this, and he had a plan. Queen h4, forming a battery along with the bishop, putting even more pressure on this knight. Now this pin must be broken, and therefore bishop to e7 by Lasker, developing the bishop, getting ready to castle the king to safety, and also helping out protecting this knight. The story of Harry Nelson Pillsbury with the white pieces is a little bit sad maybe. He had this incredible tournament result where he won Hastings, the super tournament, with a convincing score. Maybe he celebrated a little bit too much after the tournament. It seems at least that he contracted syphilis between that tournament and this tournament right here. And in the middle of this tournament, he would become very, very ill. And he started strong in the tournament, but he finished very poorly with a very poor result. And in fact, he died from syphilis very, very young. So we lost one of the great, great talents of chess, which is, of course, quite sad. We can admire his art, of course. That is immortal, and in this position he castled. What is that about? Well, he castled long, so first of all he's of course getting his king to safety. Always nice to have a safe king. But also this develops the rook here, which is now looking at the pawn and X-ray attacking the queen. And this is actually a very clever defensive move, because what it really does is that it defends this pawn, which could have been taken earlier, but of course now that would fall to rook captures the queen. And therefore Dr. Emmanuel Lasker plays queen to a5. And maybe you noticed that I said Dr. Emmanuel Lasker, and that is because Emmanuel Lasker was not only a chess player, not only a world champion, he was also a professor of mathematics and a philosopher as well, and an all-around extremely smart guy. We will learn a little bit more during the course of this game about just how smart he was, of course, on the chessboard, but also his considerable achievements outside of the chessboard. Now, with the queen having moved and therefore not being pinned to this pawn with the rook, this pawn here is now attacked again, and Pillsbury plays pawn to e3. What does that do? It defends this pawn with the bishop here on f1. Of course, in chess, we want to develop all of our pieces, so we get the knights and the horses out of the stables and the soldiers out of the barracks, because when they are asleep at home, they are not aiding our cause as general on this magnificent black and white battlefield. And therefore we see bishop e7. Little bit of a quiet move, but it opens up the rook here, and it gets the bishop into the game just a little bit more. Another quiet move, this time by Pillsbury, who plays king b1. Now, what is that about? Why move the king again? on c1, the king is not protecting the a2 pawn. Go to b1 to protect the pawn, so that if we are to move this knight at some point, the queen cannot come in and capture the pawn, because it will be protected by the king. Here, the best move in the position is what Lasker played. He played pawn to h6, and if you put it into the computer and say pawn to h6, that is the best move. The thing about this move is that it's much deeper than it looks, because it does not do what it looks like it's doing. It looks like it's attacking the bishop, forcing it maybe to trade itself off for the knight or move. But it's actually not doing that, because the pawn is pinned by the queen to the rook. So if pawn takes bishop, queen takes rook, with check even, big trouble for black. And still it's the best move, because it's setting up plans for later for black here, and we will see that in action. Is it surprising that in 1896, almost 130 years ago at the time of this recording, and maybe I will, by the way, mix up 1895 and 1896, because when the tournament was played, it started in 1895, and then they played over New Year's Eve, and then it became 1986. That's a little bit confusion about exactly if this game was played in 95 or 96. Is it surprising that Emmanuel Lasker plays these computer moves almost 130 years ago? Yes and no. Before Lasker, we had players like Steinitz, Zukertort, Tarrasch, Anderson, these romantic players who played beautiful chess very often, but it was not very correct. If you put their games into modern computers, ask modern grandmaster to analyze them, they will find what we call positional inaccuracies and tactical mistakes galore, many of these kind of mistakes, but not Lasker. Lasker was the first world champion and the first great chess player who played to a standard that looks like what we are playing at today. He did not know all the opening theory and all the endgames that have later been developed, because how could he? But he was the first truly accurate player, and an absolute towering genius of the chessboard and off the chessboard. We will learn about that a little bit later. Pillsbury played c takes d. This is about destabilizing black's center. Black destabilized white's center, and he cannot allow black to have center control with a stable center. So let's destabilize it. Also here we see the benefits of the king having moved from c1 to b1, because after he captures the pawn here, there's an open file for a rook towards his king. And if it had been here, it could be exposed. So it's a nice little benefit to have the king here on b1. Pawn takes pawn on d5 by the world champion Emmanuel Lasker. So now he has this isolated pawn, but he has attacking ideas. For instance, this bishop would very much like to come here with a check. Pillsbury says, nah, we don't want to allow that, and plays knight d4, covering that square. And here black finishes his development by castling to the king side, which does a lot of things. First of all, now this pawn is attacking this bishop. White has to do something about it. Also, the map of the battlefield has been drawn, and we can see that the kings are on opposite sides of the board. Usually that promises a very exciting and imbalanced game. If you think about it, chess is a game of balance. Everybody starts with the same pieces in the same configuration. The only imbalance in chess from the starting position is that white goes first. So the more imbalances that are created, the more creative and attacking and interesting the game can become. And we will see a very creative and interesting game from here. The pawn is of course threatening the bishop. The bishop captures the knight. There is an exchange here. Of course, this is not recaptured by the pawn. This would hang this pawn to the queen, and also the king would be exposed. There would be a hole in his castle. No, bishop takes, bishop on f6. And this bishop you really should pay a lot of attention to. Lasker was an absolute genius with his bishops. He even invented a completely new chess tactic with the bishops in one of his most famous games. And this bishop is going to exert an enormous amount of influence for the remainder of this game. It attacks the queen moves. And Pillsbury's idea is to go to h4 to coordinate an attack with the knight on d5 that is currently only protected once by the world champion Dr. Emmanuel Lasker. What kind of a guy was this Dr. Emmanuel Lasker, world champion? He's a bit of a one-of-a-kind person. Emmanuel Lasker was born in 1868. He's the son of a Jewish cantor in what is now Poland. And he was born into abject poverty. But he was an extremely talented young boy. At the age of only 11 years old, his parents sent him to study mathematics in Berlin, both in order to try to give him some kind of future and also because they could not afford to have him at home. His older brother was, I believe, 8 years his senior, already lived in Berlin. And Lasker arrived in Berlin, immediately faced a problem that he was sharing this very small flat with his brother, and they had no money at all. His brother, however, was a hustler, a chess hustler and other games, so he would earn money by going to cafes and win games of chess, playing for money, different kind of games. And he taught young Emmanuel, how to do this as well. And when I say that they were living in poverty, I'm pretty serious. At one point, Lasker relates, they were sharing a single pair of trousers. They had one pair of trousers between them. Of course, you can't go out, particularly not in that time, without trousers. So if somebody would have the trousers on a given day, they could go out, either study or play some chess, earn some money, and the next day somebody else would have the trousers. That is the kind of money issues they were facing. Later on, he went on to do many great things. We will talk about them a little bit later. Now let's go on with this amazing game here. Lasker is thinking about Okay, he wants to defend this pawn. This pawn is under quite a lot of pressure. The rook is also X-ray attacking this pawn. The knight is attacking the pawn. The queen is attacking the pawn. Here's what he comes up with. He plays knight takes knight on d4. And because of this already very strong bishop, we cannot see rook takes knight, because that would lose what we call the exchange. The rook is in general a stronger piece than the bishop, so rook takes knight, bishop takes rook would be very beneficial for black. Therefore, pawn on e3 takes the knight on d4. That does a couple of things. This pawn moving here means that the rook is now blocked and can no longer see this pawn. So now we are down to two potential attackers, the knight and the queen. Also, it's a permanent weakness. This pawn, it cannot be protected by other pawns. It is isolated. And why is this more of an issue for white than it is for black, who also have this isolated pawn? It is because of this extremely strong bishop and of the fact that Lasker can now play bishop to e6, adequately defending his pawn, and it is going to be basically extremely hard, if not impossible, to exploit the weakness of this pawn. That is not going to stop Harry Nelson Pillsbury from trying his absolute best to do just that. He plays pawn to f4. What is that about? That is about going to f5, protected by the queen, chasing the bishop away, and then maybe looking at a later stage to come in and capture this pawn. Also, of course, getting this pawn very close to the king could aid in the attack. We see how Lasker at this point has played more accurately. This is not a big deal between you and me. There's probably not that much of a difference between how white's pieces are configured and how black's pieces are configured, but to a very accurate player, to a grandmaster level player, geniuses like these two, the small positional nuances, as we would call them, are actually quite telling. The main thing is this potentially extremely strong bishop on f6, and the fact that white is a little bit behind in what we would call development. That would be getting all of their pieces active. It's just one tempo, it's just one move, but this bishop here is not really in the game, meaning that the rooks are not connected, they are not protecting each other. And that is actually pretty serious stuff at the very high level of chess. And now we're going to see some very serious stuff as well. This is not positional, this is tactical. Rook on a to c8, bringing the last piece that wasn't really doing anything into the game. The queen, the rook, the two bishops are all in the game. You could argue, is this rook in the game? It is actually, it's defending the king. Also, it's always looking after its sister tower here. So they are already cooperating. And the tactical point, as opposed to positional or strategical point about rook a c8 is going to be revealed now. Pawn to f5, attacking the bishop. The bishop could maybe drop back. Maybe like so. Because this pawn is blocking the view of the queen on this pawn. So it's not immediately clear how we are going as white to capture the pawn. However, this would be a concession. This would probably lead to an equal game or to an advantage for white. It's not Lasker's point at all. Lasker's point is the first in a series of absolutely stunning, beautiful moves. And you can maybe meditate a little bit on the position, what you would play here, what could be some great ideas. I can tell you it's going to be spectacular attacking ideas that are very forcing. And while you do that, I can maybe tell you a little bit more about the accomplishments of Emmanuel Lasker. He has a world record in chess that has yet to be beaten, maybe will never be beaten. He is the longest reigning world champion. He beat Wilhelm Steinitz to become world champion. And then he was world champion for 27 years, winning all his matches against all contenders and generally just dominating chess, until the rise of one Cuban genius, José Raúl Capablanca, to whom he lost his world championship title after holding on to it for 27 years. Have you come up with some ideas for the move? Let me show you what Lasker played in the position. The strongest move, rook captures the knight, which is kind of beautiful because it's a double sacrifice in a way, because it's sacrificing what we would call the exchange. The rook is generally considered to be worth the equivalent of 5 pawns in how strong it is, and the knight and bishop they are generally considered to be worth about 3 points. So when you give up the rook for the knight or the bishop, we call it sacrificing the exchange. But it's sacrificing the exchange in 2 ways, because either you could capture it with this pawn, the b pawn, or you could also capture here, and we have to explore the different options to understand what white must play to stay in the game, because this is actually an extremely strong move. So the first and most obvious question is, what if we just capture the rook? Let's say we capture the rook. Why not? B takes c3. B takes the rook on c3. We are at this point still attacking the bishop, which would probably have to move, and we are up a rook for a knight. And I mean, if the queen comes in and captures on c3, we will capture the bishop here. We will be up a full rook at that point. I mean, we have to really investigate this to see if we can't just play this and win like this. What is Lasker's idea if we just play this? Lasker's idea is to also sacrifice the bishop and say, oh, I only need the rook, the queen, and this bishop, because of the exposed nature of the white majesty in this position. These 3 pieces with the queen all the way over here having a hard time to participate in the defense, and with this bishop blocking the view of these 2 rooks. With all these strategical positional factors, this is actually enough to win, and it is. But how? So the idea is to also sacrifice the bishop. I should point out this is not what happened in the game. Pillsbury saw this and rejected this variation because he saw that it would be loosening. He played the strongest move. But let's understand, let's travel back in time 128 years or whatever it is, and go into the mind's eye of the great Harry Nelson Pillsbury and see what he was contemplating and why he rejected this variation here. The point here is rook c8. What does that do? It creates what is basically an unstoppable attack. There are a million variations here, and nothing works for white. But let's explore the most forcing one, the most ambitious one for white, which would be capturing the bishop. Let's just take the bishop as well. And the point here, so black is of course down a full rook at this point here, and maybe this attack coordination with the pawn and the queen on f7 here looks very dangerous, but queen takes c3 is actually a completely unstoppable checkmate threat. So you could play queen takes f7 with check. That actually loses a little bit faster. The best move would be pawn takes with check. And this forces, this is extremely important to be accurate here, it forces king f8. Extremely important to go to f8 and not go, for instance, to h8, which would in some variations allow this pawn to come forward and promote itself to a queen. I'm not going to show those variations, otherwise this video would be 8 hours long if I had to go into that much detail. But king f8, the only move here. And now, what is the threat? The threat, it's not black to move, but the threat is queen check, king moves, bishop captures pawn check, rook takes bishop, and queen f1 with a checkmate. Notice that this bishop is blocking crucially this rook from defending here. Okay, so that is the threat. Of course, it's not black to move. So if this threat is so dangerous, let's protect against that threat with queen back to e2. Now there's no queen check. The problem is that we are still playing bishop takes d4. If rook takes, then just queen here is checkmate again. This pesky, this bishop here. Problem. And if you are not playing rook takes, then there is no way to stop queen a1, checkmate. The only, okay, you can stop it like this, but it loses. The only way to stay in the game in any way would be queen check, but rook takes, pawn takes, promoting into a queen again, with check, but king takes. We still have the problem of queen checkmate, one of these two squares, but now with the rook on c1, c8 gone, we can play rook takes bishop. Now there's no checkmate, but of course queen takes rook. So Pillsbury was calculating all of this, got to this position in his mind's eye, and concluded that this is completely hopeless for white. All of the pieces on their starting squares except the king, and the bishop has no real prospects, the rook has no real prospects, and the queen of course is one piece that can do what both these pieces can combined. It's much stronger, and there is a passed pawn here to boot, and even a 2+ advantage, 2-pawn advantage, 3 pawns to 5 pawns. So this is completely hopeless for white. So he didn't play pawn takes rook. So what did he play? Let's see if I can remember where all the pieces are supposed to be. There's a rook that captured something here, but it's a black rook. It's attacked by this pawn here. There is a queen on a5. There is a pawn here. There is a pawn here. There is a pawn here attacking a bishop here, and there is a bishop here needed in the attack. There is a rook here, and I believe that's the position. Excuse me, of course there is a queen here. Okay, I believe I figured it out. There's also a rook here. So this is the position. And because of all what we just looked at, it doesn't work to capture the rook. And therefore, Pillsbury played the best move, which is pawn takes pawn. Pawn takes bishop, I'm sorry. Pawn takes bishop on e6. Leaving the rook here, it doesn't work to capture the rook. And now Lasker is faced with a bit of a question. What was his plan really? Because white is now threatening to capture the rook actually. Rook can't really stay there. Also this pawn here may come in and capture this pawn at some point. You can't go back, for instance, here with the rook. Falls to being captured by the bishop. What if you go all the way back? Doesn't do much. It doesn't do much. Lasker had just absolutely amazing plan here, which is to insist on sacrificing this rook. He played rook a3, sacrificing the rook, or offering the sacrifice of the rook once more. Can be just captured by the pawn, and the threat is rook takes a2, with ideas of coming in check and just ripping the white majesty to shreds. So what is the point of the move? What's the point of the sacrifice? The point is that if you capture with the pawn, which you probably have to do at some point or another, because the threat against a2 is too strong, what did you gain as black? This bishop is now even stronger. We can see with this pawn gone, there's only one pawn in the way, and that pawn, if we can get through that, this bishop will exercise an enormous amount of control and influence over the critical dark squares around the white majesty. That is the point of rook to a3. So should Pillsbury just capture it immediately, or is there something else he would like to do first? Is there something else you would do first? He was a little bit concerned with this pawn. He was a little bit afraid of losing this pawn to just pawn takes pawn with a potentially maybe strong center, pawn center for black. So he thought, which may not be the most accurate, he thought that he should play a Zwischenzug, an in-between move, and play pawn takes pawn on f7 with check. That's what he did. Pawn takes pawn on f7 and check. To which Lasker replied, rook takes pawn, and now it is time to play pawn takes rook. So how is Lasker going to get to the king? I would probably play queen takes pawn, right? Get close to the king and capture a pawn. But that's not like there's only one move that works. And it's all about this bishop. We have to make this bishop work. We have to exploit the weakness created by this bishop, meaning that the rooks are not coordinated. The way to do it is queen to b6 with a check. And what is it about? And what that is about is that it checks the king while coordinating with the bishop on the d4 pawn, so that if the king moves, of course you are not going to go to c1 because this rook check will end the game in quick fashion. So the king here, the problem though is bishop takes pawn with check. That's almost checkmate because of the queen. So the only move is rook takes. This is not what happened in the game, but this explains what happened in the game. Queen takes rook. And remember that black is actually still a piece down here. White is still this bishop ahead, but this is check. King only has this move. This is the only legal move. So I thought that the winning continuation was queen to d1 check, missing what we know statistically is the move that chess players move, the type of move that chess players move the most often, which is long backwards diagonal moves. And this one does not work because queen takes queen and black loses. So the critical move here to win is not this queen check, but this queen check, queen to e4 check. And the point is that we are activating this rook into the attack with check in one way or another. So we use checks all the time. Check, 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 check. Why? Because in that way, white will have no time to untangle their pieces. So let's say you go here, then the rook comes in with check like this. It's going to be winning. And if you go here instead, we can activate the rook with this check. It's going to be winning. And if king back, now we can check on the back rank because we can come here, no longer going on a defended square. And now the king will have to come up, and now we come in with this check, and it's going to be winning. So that is why we go back. That is why in this position here, is this correct? We have the bishop here. We lost the rook. No, I forgot this guy. Defending here. And the queen moved here to check the king. And we were trying to figure out why king here didn't work. We just saw that whole variation with bishop takes bishop here. And that is why Pillsbury did not play king a1 just yet. So is the British position correct? It looks, yeah, this is the position, right? So all of what we just looked at explains what is all an otherwise quite enigmatic move by white, which is instead of moving out, just sacrificing this bishop with bishop b5, and it looks like it's doing nothing, right? Because it can be captured with check, and it looks like it's the same position, and now white really does have to go to a1, c1 not available due to this check. So king here The point, though, is that the queen is now no longer attacking the d4 pawn, so bishop takes pawn does not work. We will just see rook takes pawn, and black is, toast. So that is the point. Also, the bishop gave itself up, just sacrificed itself to connect these two sister rooks here. Okay. So what did Lasker play? What is how to continue the game from here? This is one of the rare occurrences where Lasker failed to find the strongest move. The strongest move, as revealed by later analysis, is queen to c4. But Lasker played this other idea, which is very, very nice, and only extremely staunch defense by Pillsbury avoided an immediate loss after this move. Rook to c7 now. So what is the point of that little move? And it has a beautiful point. Let's say we make some random move like this, right? Just to show what the point is. And the point is to sacrifice the rook like this with check. Only one legal move. Rook takes rook. And the point is rook is no longer defending this pawn. So bishop takes pawn is checkmate. That is the point of rook coming here. However, Pillsbury is of course extremely strong chess player, easily saw this idea and found the only defensive resource, which is rook to d2. Meaning that if you come down with the rook now, I can capture with the other rook, maintaining a defense on the d4 pawn. Here we are. So, still trying to make this bishop very, very strong. Lasker advances this rook, getting it closer to the king, and when he puts it on c4, it attacks this pawn as well, coordinating with the bishop, thinking about bishop takes, pawn, rook takes, and rook takes. So it's attacked twice. We play as white. Rook on h to d1. Now seemingly adequately defending the pawn. And Lasker changes his mind. He says, okay, it's not really about that pawn at all. I just want to get closer to the white king. Rook c3 now. With an attack on this pawn. And the attack here is extremely dangerous. And one of the big problems for white is that the queen here is a little bit offside. It's a little bit offside. If this queen was somewhere nearer the king, and could maybe trade herself off for this queen, white would be winning because the two rooks are stronger than the rook and the bishop. But the queen has a hard time coming in to the defense. And therefore, there's this move. It's the best move in the position. Queen to f5. Both looking at potentially coming back all the way to the king, keeping an eye on this pawn. If the queen moves away, we can capture the pawn with check. Also considering coming into e6 with a check and maybe a perpetual check against the Dark Majesty. Classy move there. Now queen c4 by Lasker, the winning idea. Now the threat is again with this bishop. It's rook check. Rook takes rook. Queen takes rook, which would be checkmate had it not been for queen being able to come all the way back now. But queen takes rook, and checkmate in 5 Why? Because this bishop is coming to come in and capture this pawn. In addition to being up a full piece, there is no way you can stop this bishop in coming in and capturing this pawn, so it's going to be very easily losing for white, very easily winning for black. So queen is here, the rook is here. So in order to stave off this threat, Pillsbury played king to b2, missing a very crucial idea, which we have kind of looked at many times. It's sacrificing the rook on a3. Now it's just the other rook after we sacrificed the first one on e3. So rook takes a3, threatening all sorts of queen takes, rook takes, all sorts of nasty checkmates in various ways. And we see a little bit of a desperado check, queen to e6 check, the king comes to h7, and you could say, maybe we can get a perpetual, moving the queen back. Actually, at some point, the king is going to go to h8, and on h8 there are no more checks. Crucially, this check does not work. It's covered by the queen. So this is what we saw, queen check here and then king here. Actually, he didn't even try for the repetition. He just played, okay, king takes rook. Let me get out of all these threats on a2. King takes rook. And that is going to be checkmate in 6 moves. How? How is this checkmate? So black is down a lot of pieces, right? But the king is, there's only one really important thing that Lasker is looking at here. It's the king. So the first move is about getting the king closer to his own pieces and further away from the defensive rooks. So king, or rather queen to c3 check. It's easy to calculate, only one legal move. King to a4. And before I give you the final moves of the game, I'd like to say that I have a Patreon. If you want to support the channel and help me make more of these videos, and of course you can get access to exclusive content and be on the ASMR Chess Discord and all of that. It's ASMR Chess it's patreon.com/ASMR Chess. And if you like the pieces here, there's a link in the description where you can buy them with a 10% discount. In fact, the link and the promo code gives you a 10% discount on everything they sell in the shop where they sell these chessboards, chess pieces, chess accessories. Okay, with that out of the way, what is the winning move? Can you find it? It's actually a little bit of a sacrifice again, because I don't think Lasker sacrificed enough material in this game. So b5 check. It's kind of move that you have to calculate because it is so forcing. It is only allowing one reply. There's only one reply from white here, which is king takes pawn. King can't do anything else. So king takes pawn, making it possible to play queen c4, driving the king further away from the defense and closer to the black pieces. Again, there's only one legal move. You cannot go here because of the pawn. The only legal move is to go here. And what is the killer blow? It is the super bishop here, the star piece of the game, has just been basically sitting on this square the entire time, but you know, in all the variations it was just wreaking havoc. And of course it's very, very fitting that it gives this check, which is extremely close to being checkmate, but there is one legal move, which is to interpose with the queen. And now both pawn takes queen is checkmate and bishop takes queen is checkmate. It's of course a matter of taste. After the check, Pillsbury resigned the game. I believe Lasker would have played bishop takes queen checkmate just to give a little thank you and allow the bishop to deliver the checkmate after having been the strongest and most important piece throughout the game. So yes, that is the game, and a little bit of a history of chess history and a beautiful chess game. I hope you relaxed very much. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope that I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.